In this video, we are talking a lot of drama in regards to Florida, DeSantis, Disney, ReedyCreek. There is a ton of stuff to dive into. We're going to get into it up next. Welcome aboard to another episode of OG55. I brought my good friend, collaborator, host of Freshly Squeezed, producer Dre, the man who holds many, many titles. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good. You know, it's one of those things. I called you, you called me. It's like we should do it, and it's like yeah, we should. So here we are. Best place you can find me is on Twitter. That's at VashSky. It's right down there. Having a lot of very interesting conversations lately, for sure. So please keep rolling them in. And to find me, well, it's on the channel you're watching right now at OrangeGrove55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice and news and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove. So that is where you can find me.
Perfect. So without further ado, let's get started. So for those of you that are not aware, we did a video, I think it was a couple days ago, about this whole ReedyCreek drama going on in Florida. For those of you that are not aware, kind of set the table a little bit. Basically, ReedyCreek is its own governing body in Walt Disney World. Disney basically runs like its own government at Walt Disney World. They have autonomy for their own property, right? And this has been the case since what Dre? It's like 1967, if I'm not mistaken.
1967, right? Yeah, just right after Walt passes, they pass this thing. And like I said, it was for really the development of Epcot, because it was all kind of intending to be Epcot, the city, and Disney felt that there were a number of things that they want to kind of have working in their favor as in regards to that. And that's where they set up the ReedyCreek Improvement District and finally got that legislation passed. And really, it was really Walt who kind of made that happen, both during the negotiation period and when he died, because those legislators felt, okay, let's, this is what he wanted to do, kind of rally around his passing, so to speak. Let's give Walt what he wanted in this. So, but now times they have changed. They have moved on, and now we're in 2022, and it's getting real interesting.
It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. So basically, what's going on here is the Florida legislature stated a few days ago that they're looking into this. Hey, you know what? If Disney's going to go ahead and do the whole woke, and I'm quoting them, woke politics thing, right?
Yep.
Then maybe we should rescind this special privilege that they have in Florida and was it Orange County kind of govern them?
Yeah, Orange County and Osceola County. So it straddles, I got that wrong in the last video. It straddles a couple of cities, but the counties involved are going to be Osceola County and Orange County. Those are the two at offer, and I think, at least by the comments of the legislature, it looks like they'd be interested in kind of having that all go to Orange County in terms of its in terms of its responsibility and governance and so forth.
Fascinating. So before we get started and everything, should we play the DeSantis clips? We got one from yesterday and one today.
Right. So our good buddy, friend of the channel, Showcase, was able to clip some of these audio clips out and post them on his Twitter, so I'll play the audio there. But to give the viewer some context, DeSantis at a recent press conference, actually yesterday's press conference, then we'll play today's press conference, was asked about these issues, and he had some interesting things to say. I just want to note for the viewers listening at home, I want you to note his maybe enthusiasm, changing enthusiasm, lack thereof, as you kind of hear this. So let's play the first couple, and then we'll go forward.
Cool.
I think what has happened is there's a lot of these special privileges that are not justifiable, but because Disney had held so much sway, they were able to sustain a lot of special treatment over the years. Well, now I think the way with their conduct, and look, you see some of these people on the videos that they put out, some of these executives and what they're saying, and you're just like, are you kidding me? I mean, this is really, really crazy, some of the stuff that they're doing. And so I think that they've been dishonest about this. And I think what that's done is, the left is upset at them, and now everyone else is upset at them. And so they've lost a lot of the pull that they used to have. And honestly, I think that's a good thing for our state, because the state should be governed by the best interests of the people. You should not have.
And then there's a second clip here. Let me just go ahead
and that was from yesterday, correct?
That was from yesterday.
And that is able to dictate policy in all these different realms. And they have done that for many, many years. And if that stops now, which it should, that'll be a good thing for Florida. And so I would say any special privileges that are in law, I would like to get rid of generally. But I think in this particular case with Disney, I just don't think you have very many people in the legislature anymore who are going to be able to defend a lot of what has been done over many, many years, to really have them almost govern themselves in some of these things. That was probably never appropriate to start, but it's certainly not appropriate now at this point. Okay, guys, thanks.
There you go. That's the kind of the first day. So that was yesterday's press conference where he made those comments. And really, that was a big escalation, because I know we had been talking about this in private about some of the disputes between the legislature, DeSantis, and so forth. And my whole feeling was, well, if DeSantis is enthusiastic for this idea, then you might see the wheels really turn there. And he alluded to a couple of other things, why he was doing what he was doing, and some of the other dramas playing out within the Disney company. And using that as sort of like, hey, this is what's really going on here. Maybe we should be looking at this. He also said maybe it was never okay. That's an allusion to it's kind of unconstitutionality, and that's kind of what I was talking about before, right? Maybe it was unconstitutional to begin with, to actually have this arrangement already set up. I know our very astute viewers have informed that there are districts like this set up in a couple of places across the country. I believe there's one in Illinois that's kind of like the best kind of allegory to this. But even they would concede it's never been at this scale before, and they've never had this wide ranging of privileges before. So that was yesterday's comments, but today's comments are really, really fascinating as well. So let's play a couple of those. Let's see here. And
here's a little bit, I know you've talked about Disney, it feels like, for the last couple of days, but here in Central Florida, there are some millions of dollars in tax incentives that they could get for bringing employees to Lake Nona. Is the state considering taking some of those incentives away from Disney?
So those are not Disney specific. They do not, people have been reporting they're getting all this. They have not qualified for any tax incentives. And I think what people are pointing to is just a general program that we have for every business. Now, others have pointed out in the legislature some of the things that are really unique to Disney over many, many decades, where they have gotten essentially this one corporation put on a pedestal and treated differently, not only than other business, but even on other theme parks. And so that is something I know that they're scrutinizing, but there are no special tax breaks that are Disney specific that we would contemplate. Anything that they would ever be eligible for would be ones that any business would be eligible for. Now, the legislature can certainly reevaluate that as a whole, but my view is we should just treat everybody equally. We shouldn't let one company have their own set of rules compared to everybody else. And I think they've been able to sustain this because they've had a lot of clout for many, many decades. And I think now, with seeing kind of what's happening, and it's not just opposing a bill, I think it's demagoguing the bill, but then also these videos with these people out in California who are working very high up in this company. The stuff coming out of their mouths is unbelievable, that they view their programming as a way to inject a lot of these topics into programming for very young kids. And I think I could tell you, as a parent of young kids, that is not what I want to be seeing. Them talking about pushing an agenda, an ideological agenda. So I think there's a whole host of stuff, but it's really going to be up for the legislature to reevaluate. I could tell you, just as a matter of first principle, if you didn't have lobbying heft and you didn't have a lot of influence, I think a lot of those things that have accumulated over the years would probably not be justifiable.
And I will say, a lot of people have questioned why Disney would be donating to the politicians that it does in Florida, right? Why would you be donating seemingly across the board? Why wouldn't you choose a political side? Well, as DeSantis kind of alluded to right there, I think those donations were to placate anybody who might be in positions of power in Florida in order to keep things like the ReedyCreek Improvement District and so forth. And, when Disney pulled those things, it really kind of, as we said in the last video, it really kind of made them vulnerable. So I have two more clips, but OG, I would love to give get your idea on this so far.
Well, you said, like you mentioned, like when they pulled the funding, it made them vulnerable.
Yeah.
I mean, see, that's the thing too, is it's like, and this is the issue I have. And if this came up 2 years ago, DeSantis is like, hey, look, I was looking over the books or whatever, and I was kind of like, I just realized, like, wow, Disney has these special privileges. We really have to address this, right? Mm-hmm. If it came from that, like, kind of like that organic kind of place, I'd be like, okay. I just find it the timing to be a little suspect.
Oh,
but
sure.
The money dries up. Disney says, hey, look, we're cutting you off. Mm-hmm. Now suddenly Disney's influence in the state is a problem. It's problematic. Oh, we can't have it. Special privileges. It's a little dirty. It's a little dirty because he didn't mind taking the money before. Now, because the money dried up. Oh, well, now we got to look at it. We got to analyze it.
Well, yes, and that's the kind of the whole thing. I'm really glad you brought that up because yes, it is a dirty game, and we kind of know it's a dirty game, and that's kind of. I mean, I think when we had the show with, Alia a few, I believe it was like weeks ago now, we even said that it was like, maybe they should, keep the dirty money out and so forth, and maybe not, donate to anybody or stay out of politics and stuff like that. But look, there's a couple of other things too. They not only took back that funding, but they also challenged the authority directly. They challenged the authority of the state. Both its legislature and the governorship, and now it's like, okay, well, pulling funding is one thing, and I will say some of the legislators, including the sponsor of the bill, apparently is willing to give all of his campaign donations back to Disney.
Okay.
So, that whole thing, I think it's more about their power being challenged, which is at issue, than it is. Maybe as much or more than, depending on how you look at it, the funding itself. And when you looked at the polling, that's why I brought this up, folks, because the polling was going to inform a lot.
Yeah.
If you pull the funding and then challenge the authority of these legislators, who are they going to support? Who are they going to back? They're probably going to back their constituency, who was, for better or worse, was in favor of the bill largely in Florida. So that's kind of where we're at here. Back these guys in the corner, and now they're coming out. Again, it's Disney should have understood this quite plainly. But to get back to this real fast, here's the kind of second part of this, and this is kind of the thing that everybody's talking about today.
Do you think the Disney ReedyCreek district should be dissolved?
Well, I think that the legislature is going to have to look to see. I mean, I can tell you, I was shocked to see some of the stuff that's in there. They could do their own nuclear power plant. Is there any other private company in the state that can just build a nuclear power plant on their own? They're able to do certain things that nobody else is able to do. So I think they're right to be looking at this and reevaluating it and having an even playing field for everybody. I think is much better than to basically allow one company to be a law unto itself.
Okay, so a couple things with this. This is interesting. Now, I don't believe for a second that DeSantis just found out about the idea that Disney could build a nuclear power plant. I mean,
Yeah.
as fans, we all knew they could do that. As governor of Florida, he certainly knew that before today.
Right, and in this clip right here, I think he kind of says like, I just learned about this kind of thing, which is what OG is referring to, and it's like, wait, what? So let's see here.
Can you give us specifics on what your next moves are going forward with this?
With these bonuses?
No, with the Disney.
Well, honestly, I don't know if one of the legislators would want to weigh in on it. I mean, as you know, this stuff is in statutory. These are in Florida statutes. I mean, this is stuff that the legislature has passed. So me as the governor, I could be presented with changes to that. And I think I've said I'd be receptive to that, but ultimately the legislature would have to move forward. So I know that there's a lot of discussion about that, and we'll just see, we'll see how that shakes out.
Yeah.
So
that's a much different tone than yesterday.
Isn't that a much different tone? Now, to get back to the nuclear power plant comment, we were talking about this, OG, before, and
right.
I had been doing. I had been investigating Disney for quite a bit, become a fan and really engrossing myself into the company and so forth. And I was a little bit late to the party when it came to, they do have the ability to set up their own nuclear power plant on the site, because that had become an issue before. Apparently, the legislatures were kind of looking at it and going, should they retain that power? And eventually they were able to maintain that. But yes, you're right. How can the governor not know that? Now, maybe it was like to me, maybe it was like to him, but I think you make a good point, OG, that he has to have known that they had that kind of special privilege, right? And I think in that instance, just like we were talking about before with how his change of tone kind of, how it's like, he wasn't as authoritative on this point today as he was yesterday, right? So it's like, how does that all work there? I think it made quite a big splash in media and circles and stuff, and I think he's kind of taking a step back and going, is there necessarily support for this particular issue? How about I spout some facts and figures off and kind of, as you say, trial balloon it and kind of see whether or not there is enthusiasm from not just the legislatures, but also from his base as he's running for governor this year.
Right. And I think when it comes to his base, this could go, look, it could be really, really good for him, and it could be really, really bad for him. Mm-hmm. The really, really good side, perception-wise, for his base could be, sticking it to woke Disney. Yeah. Mm-hmm. His base is really going to be receptive, I think, to that. What I'm saying? I think that a lot of his base is gonna see, look, they don't like Disney. They don't like Hollywood. This kind of like, we're going after Disney will probably bode well for him and his base. Mm-hmm. on that level, I think,
Yeah. And his base broadly, but I think what you're gonna, I don't want to take words out of your mouth. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, but I think that on the flip side, I do think there is also a conservative point to be made when it comes to this that's not good necessarily, because conservatives have made the argument for many, many years, decades. Mm-hmm. Get government out of the way. Let business do its thing. Right. Small government kind of like mindset, right? At the core, this is about taking away Disney's autonomy and inserting government into the equation, inserting more red tape into the equation. Sure. Now, I think that might be a problem for a lot of conservatives that are small government minded. This is you are basically Californianizing, so to speak, the Walt Disney World Resort. They're going to have to, basically what's going to happen is that Disney World will have to basically get approval for things just like Disneyland Resort does in California. Now, mind you, this is the reason why Disney is investing more in Florida right now with Lake Nona and stuff like that. So right at this time, when you have Disney, who's really, really interested in doubling down on the investment in Florida to do this and to give Disney and to spook Disney to the point where it's like, that their freedom, their business freedom, so to speak, might be taken away.
Yeah.
I think is really bad timing for Florida. In my opinion, I think that you're at the cusp of Florida being the recipient of a lot of business because of the freedom they have in regards to being so business friendly. And to insert this in there and basically say, hey, you know what, Disney? You might have to deal with a lot of the same red tape you have to deal with in California when you move over here. I think it was a bad move for Florida, in my opinion. But what do you say, Dre?
Well, that's a very, I mean, look, you make a lot of good points. And I will say, when it comes to that kind of small government mindset, I think like we had to wade in these issues. I never wanted to do this, but now we're in it. So we're going to do it and we're going to go full bore. So here we go. I think that was more kind of almost like a libertarian mindset, but it was libertarian cloaking more of a corporatist mindset, if I had to speak more precisely about it. And I do believe that DeSantis had those corporatist leanings for a while, but he's slowly gone more towards a populist position, which is kind of at odds. And I think Disney kind of underestimated that. I think he was, they were working with maybe like a Kristi Noem type figure up there in South Dakota and didn't realize that DeSantis has kind of changed his political philosophy and kind of embraced this more populist message that we're seeing kind of, go across the country. And as a populist, as opposed to a corporatist, your use of government would be to kind of it would be to kind of to use the government apparatus in order to empower the people over the corporation, right? And I think that's kind of the difference here. Now, I will say he hasn't completely bought into this on this specific issue, as we've heard, right? He was saying, well, the legislature has to, figure it out. The legislature, which is not usually what he says. Usually when it comes to other big-time bills in Florida, as he has been known to pass, it's like, well, I'm a huge champion for this. I'm going to push this. We're going to do this kind of thing. And now it's like, well, the legislature's going to have to figure it out. That tells me that even he is kind of unsure about this. Even he doesn't have maybe the enthusiasm that maybe people kind of perceived that he did, at least, when talking about yesterday's comments. Yeah. And I think he is kind of trial ballooning this and kind of seeing like, is there enthusiasm for this? Should we be doing this? Because this deals with Florida directly, as our, contributor Aaliyah pointed out very astutely. In some of the DMs, so we're going to give her a shout out here. Yep. She was saying that the counties themselves might not necessarily be fully on board with this, and when you think about the responsibilities of a governor and kind of all the different camps you kind of have to look at here, if there's a lack of enthusiasm from the counties who would obviously have to take on the role of the ReedyCreek Improvement District if it is dissolved. What do they have to say about it? And I think he's kind of like, ooh, you know what? This has huge impacts, not just for Disney, but for Florida as well. And I think you do make a good point where if you do kind of dissolve the ReedyCreek Improvement District, what kind of message does that send to other businesses? Yeah. Right? And I'll say it like this. I think he even knows that, which is why if you listen to his comments, he was like, well, when it comes to like Nona, you know what? Yeah, we're not going to talk. We're not going to dissolve anything on that end. We're not going to take away any tax incentives that we gave to anybody else, kind of thing. And he's talking about the equal playing field, right? So he's kind of dabbling. He's a little bit half in, half out kind of thing. I think he's receptive to the idea, as our buddy Showcase actually pointed out on this topic. So we got to give a shout out to him, Showcase of Wishes. He was saying from even before this press conference today, he's like, I don't know if he's fully in on this. I think he might, I think he might sign it if it came across his desk, but I don't think he's fully in. I don't think he's going to push this. And that was interesting because not a lot of people were saying that in today's press conference. It really, it really kind of looks to be that way.
Yeah, no, it's Showcase. Yeah, he's been saying this for a few days. He doesn't think it's going to happen. He like you said, if it comes across his desk, he'll sign it. But he's not gonna push for it, and not, which is interesting. And I do think there is an optics element here, which is why, like you said, DeSantis mentioned the Lake Nona thing. It's not going to affect that because look, if you start to say, hey, look, we're going to go after Disney. They released this they dropped a press release that rubbed us the wrong way, and now we're going to go after their business. We're going to go after the ReedyCreek, directly because we don't like what they said. Even though ReedyCreek is this is just my opinion, but like even though ReedyCreek is a very Disney specific issue, I think that the overall idea though of like DeSantis and the Florida legislature not liking what Disney said and then they're going to retaliate. I think other companies that might be progressive or woke might look at that and go, okay, like an Apple. Perfect example would be Apple. Sure. They're very much a progressive company. Tim Cook is very woke. I mean, they're very much in line with like a Disney, so to speak, right? Yeah. They're going to go into Florida and invest. And this has got to be on their mind. Like, well, okay, if I set up a huge facility in Florida, am I going to be subject to like retaliation if I come out against a bill? Right. That's an issue optics wise, now it's not going to, the retaliation will never be the same because obviously not every company has a ReedyCreek, but there might still be some retaliation. And I think that a lot of businesses, and I think that right now, Florida is really benefiting from this idea of being kind of a free state in regard to like, you can come here and the taxes are low. We're not going to mess with you. And we're going to step to the side. We're going to step aside. And I think that right now that coming out where they're going to, we're going to like the idea of going after Disney because of their press statement. I just think it's not good timing for Florida, in my opinion. And maybe that's why DeSantis is kind of walking it back, but that's kind of my feeling on it. Yeah. And he's definitely trying to reshape the messaging around it because right now it's like retaliatory, right? That's kind of the overall messaging of it. Like you're going after this because they stepped out of line kind of thing. And he's trying to, I think that's why he's trying to reframe it and say, wait, no, I'm all about an equal footing for all the businesses in Florida. That's why he brought up Lake Nona and said, hey, those tax incentives won't change for any, for Disney, because we gave those out not just to Disney, but to, for everybody else who applied for them, right? And then that's why he brings up kind of Universal, the other theme parks, right? It's like, well, hey, wait a minute. They don't have to live and operate by the standards that Disney does in the Reedy Creek Improvement District. So, if we dissolve that, wouldn't it be better for Florida? Wouldn't it be better for those other businesses that they are now on a much more even playing field from everybody else? That's why he's trying to reframe it a little bit. He's trying to get away from that. At the same time, I mean, it's clear that, I mean, just to see how DeSantis is operating in like previously, he has very much said, he is very much kind of whenever he champions something, he kind of gets all the legislators on board. Like he kind of, and whether it be they kind of see his success as their success, so let's be on board there, or he, incentivizes them in other ways. They all kind of rally around his position, right? When he is in favor of something. And to hear his comments today doesn't look like that's necessarily the case. Now, I will say, another friend of the channel, Disney Glimpses, I know we're gonna we're gonna give them all out today, right? He was alluding to the fact that is a correct. I think that is a correct, position or opinion of the situation. But also, he was saying, well, maybe they don't actually go about dissolving the entire Reedy Creek Improvement District, but actually kind of restricting their powers, so to speak. Maybe they don't have the power to do a nuclear power plant if they want to. Maybe they don't have the power to enact their own courts, which the Reedy Creek Improvement District does, or maybe their own law enforcement. Maybe we curtail that back a bit, so you get kind of a compromise thing and not actually go after Reedy Creek in its totality. So I think that could also be at play here. And that's fair. That's completely fair because, like we mentioned in our last video about Reedy Creek, in that this is a very antiquated kind of situation because this was passed in 1967 with the mindset that Epcot was going to be a living, breathing city. Yeah. Well, we never got that living, breathing city. It turned into a theme park, right? Yeah. So it really is kind of an outdated thing in the first place. So to kind of go in there and be like, okay, look, we're not going to completely like just kneecap Disney, right? But let's go in there and like you said, Dre, let's go in there and surgically kind of, address this. Look, obviously Disney, we're not going to let you build a nuclear power plant. Come on, like the courts and all that. Like go in there and surgically sort of, and that's a good compromise, I think. I think it addresses the issue of too much corporate power, special privileges, and what have you.
Sure.
But also doesn't completely kneecap Disney, where it totally de-incentivizes them from even really investing in Florida. It is a happy medium, and Disney Glimpses is right. Maybe that is the way they go forward, and it's kind of good for both companies because Disney doesn't lose out completely, and then DeSantis can kind of go to his base and say, "Hey, look, I worked with them. We amended this issue, and we made it better, and it's kind of a win for all." And that might be the way forward. And to be honest, that probably is the way forward.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting because doing research for this topic and kind of looking at the, how this could impact not only Florida but also Disney. There's a gentleman out there called named Richard Foglesong, and he wrote a book all about this called "Married to the Mouse: Walt Disney World and Orlando." That goes into it, takes a deep dive into the Reedy Creek Improvement District. And it's it's interesting because his big thing is that Disney's kind of abused their powers as granted to them by the Reedy Creek Improvement District Act. One could make the argument, but we won't get into that here. And how this has kind of become an issue, once every 10 years kind of thing. But this is definitely the loudest it's ever gotten for sure. And he was like, yeah, I think cooler heads might prevail on this. Yeah. He's no fan of this whole thing, but even he kind of had to admit, I don't know if this is actually gonna actually work itself out here because there's so much money at stake. There's, again, the politicians in Florida. This is one of the biggest donors, kind of thing. It's there's still a lot of lobbying power at play here. I believe George and OG yourself asked me kind of what the chances are right now as far as this is concerned. I think before any of Ron DeSantis' comments, I think I was at 30-70, I think is what I said.
Like 30% happening, 70% not, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Exactly. After Ron DeSantis' comments yesterday, that was like 50-50 because it definitely seemed that he was in the affirmative camp that we're gonna look at this. And now, I think those chances have kind of gone down a little bit. I think they're below that 50-50 threshold. I don't know, maybe 35-65, 40-60 kind of thing. I think it's where I'm at right now. There's still some momentum. It made a huge splash in the media and so forth. So we'll see where it all goes. And I think there are legislators who are like, they're a little bit disgruntled, and that might end up being something. But it is interesting how this is all kind of playing out here.
It is, and it's a fascinating conversation because it actually. I've had this conversation, I believe, with you and we on this channel over the years with Disneyland. I think we had this conversation in regards to when Disneyland wanted to build the fourth hotel and the city of Anaheim was fighting them on 20 feet difference of placement of the hotel.
150 feet. It was 150 feet.
Right. And I made the argument look, how much money does this place bring into Anaheim? Anaheim would be nothing without the park. And I think that sort of kind of applies to Orlando and just Florida in general. I do think there is an argument to be made. When we talk about special treatment.
Yeah.
And this probably isn't like a popular opinion, but
sure.
The fact of the matter is these parks, both Disneyland Resort and Walt Disney World Resort in Florida, do provide a huge amount of money and tourism and dollars to these states and cities that they sit in. I think that is worth something. And I don't think that it's just they should just be treated like everyone else because they're not everyone else, to be completely honest with you. They do bring in a lot of money to these prospective states and cities. And I do think there should be a little bit of hey, you know what? Yeah, you bring in the tourism money. We're going to kick back a little bit. You know what I'm saying? I do think that's okay. And, and that might not be a popular opinion, but I do think for as much as they bring into the States, you can kick back a little bit, but how much is really the argument? How much do you allow?
Right. And I think that is the argument. I think that absolutely is the argument, that to prevent, Disney from, in the hotel instance, it was preventing Disney from taking advantage of a kind of a tax incentive that was given out to anybody, even though the city didn't want to give that out to Disney. It was for everybody. So Disney capitalized on that, as they would, and the disagreement became that 150 feet line where they, redrafted based on a number of factors, and they just couldn't get past that impasse, right? And I think an argument can be made. It's like, well, wait a minute, that's Disney's land. You put out this incentive. They already let a lot of people go from their own ranks and from the ranks of the businesses that were in downtown Disney. That's why that's being deconstructed as we speak, by the way, because they had to kick all those people out and couldn't get people back in and so forth. So it's like that's a whole thing, right? And even with Disneyland, they kind of have a a Disney height restriction, right? As it kind of flares out from the city, right? Well, not everybody's afforded that position, but it's Disney, and to your point, they do bring a lot of different incentives for the city, a lot of different tourism for the city and so forth. So it's like you do kind of treat them differently, especially at the size and scale they are. I think in Florida, I think you can make the absolutely the same argument. And yes, I think it does come down to how much do we give them? Can they necessarily pass their own liquor licenses? Can they essentially permit their own construction projects? Can they have their own courts? Can they have their own police force? That's a whole okay, well, that's really special.
Right.
So I think one could make the argument on both sides of that equation about well, they are an economic driver. Well, yeah, but they have a lot of power that we wouldn't afford to anybody else almost in the entire country. So it's like, it's that whole kind of back and forth there. I don't know. My feeling is hey, if it's Disney, if it's Universal, if it's whatever, I think if they have land, I think they should be able to use it how they want. Obviously, you have economic impact reports, and that'll affect the communities and so forth. So it's not necessarily that simple all the time. But I don't know. I mean, it's like, should the scale be even? Yes, but is it weighed? That's kind of the reality we live. So it's a back and forth thing. It's a very interesting thing, and it has a profound impact on all of these kind of citizens, politicians, Disney company themselves, and guests. So,
no, it does a huge impact, and really, the impact. And this is hypothetical, but if they were to repeal the ReedyCreek Improvement Act, that would be a huge blow to the Walt Disney Company. Beyond belief.
Goodness gracious! I mean, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars at stake here every single year, just from taxes and regulation, regulatory fees and so forth. I mean, we're talking quite a bit here. A lot's at stake right now.
And you even mentioned to me on via text message earlier today that it could even impact Disneyland Resort negatively, which I agree with you. I mean,
yes,
like there is a lot of R&D, research and development, when that comes into new attractions. For example, Galaxy's Edge. There's a reason why Bob Iger standing on the D23 stage and said, we're not just building one of these, we're building two. I know it's kind of meme worthy now, but there's a reason why they decided to build two of them. And it was because when you build two, it's cheaper. I know it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it is. When Imagineering orders more of these supplies and more of these whatever, it is cheaper to buy them in bulk than it is if you're just buying one. And that's why they do a lot of cloning. Same with Mickey, Minnie, Runaway Railway, things like that. Well, if the ReedyCreek thing is repealed and Disney really pulls back on the investment in Florida, well, that's going to affect Disneyland, because now you're not going to have we built one, now we're building two thing, right?
Sure. And it's very hard for people to kind of understand that prospect. And it's for Galaxy's Edge specifically, it's like, well, it's like you can offset a lot of the costs that you would get from building in California by building also in Florida. So it's kind of like, it kind of evens out a little bit. But I want to give people an example and kind of illustrate this point even more firmly. Sure. How long was it before we actually got an Adventures Campus?
Oh, yeah.
Why was it that long? Because Florida themselves couldn't build anything with it.
Right.
So that just gives you an idea. When Florida's out of the equation, it does have consequences and impacts on the design resort as well.
Well, and look at the quality. I mean, look, as much as I love Avengers Campus, I think it's a cool land. It's obviously leap years above what Bugs Land was. But if you look at the quality of Avengers Campus compared to like Batu, where they could do the two park thing, right? There's no comparison, you know.
Oh, sure.
I mean, Batu is like, the land itself. I mean, not completely leaving the entertainment aspect out of it, just the land itself. Batu runs circles around it. It's not even funny.
And a large part of that is, go ahead.
Oh no, yeah, no. I mean, I think basically we agree. Like it's basically because they weren't able to clone them. You know.
Yes, the investment opportunity when it's taken out of Florida completely, it's like, how much are you really going to invest? When you can't capitalize on the huge amount of hotels and the huge amount of I should say, benefits that you do when you do business in Florida, that you do get when you do it there. It's hard to pull that trigger when these things are so expensive, when Florida's not involved. And I think that's why it took so long to get Avengers Campus. And even as you astutely pointed out, the quality level itself is just not maybe at the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge level, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah, no, completely. Dre, this was a fascinating conversation. We got a lot of videos planned this weekend, which I'm really looking forward to. I'm sure we'll dive into this again, but we got I don't want to, we'll keep it a surprise, but this weekend we have a lot of new guests, a lot of special guests coming. It's gonna be a lot of fun. We're going to dive into a ton of topics. So we might dive into this one again. We'll see, but
we'll likely.
More than likely. Exactly. It's too juicy, right? There's too much there not to. There's so much to talk about. It affects so many different things.
Yeah.
It's hard not to talk about it, you know?
And it's hugely consequential. It has a huge impact. So it's not just like, oh, we like talking about this. Actually, I'm not. It's not the greatest topic in the world to talk about, but because it is so impactful, because it has so many repercussions, it's very important that we do.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. And there's a risk, like when we talk about this stuff, because it is political. It is
very political. Yeah.
We take a risk on talking about it. Every time we come on camera and discuss it, we take a risk, but we want to talk about it because, like you said, Dre, it's definitely important enough to warrant 2, 3, and 4 videos on it, because there's just so much here and the impact is so vast. Huge. Absolutely huge. But I want to thank you, brother, so much for coming on. As always, I always appreciate you coming on and talking shop with me. If you can let everybody home know where they can find you on social media.
Best place to see me is going to be at VashSky here on Twitter. Just like it's spelled right down there. A lot of interesting comments for sure. A lot of interesting debate for sure. And if you want to see me, well, it's on the channel you're watching right now at OrangeGrove55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice, news, and info squeezed fresh right from the Grove.
But really nothing compares with a freshly squeezed.
I love it. Yeah. We'd be doing a disservice if we didn't talk about this kind of stuff. That's the way I feel about it. It's like we be losing it. And I know people don't want to delve in the political, but when it's this impactful, you have no choice. We have I like to say that we have a responsibility to our viewers to bring out the most information for them.
No, 100%, Dre, 100%. We're on the same page with that. I mean, and look, I gotta be real. I love this stuff. Like, I don't want to get up here and talk about the new churro. Like, I have no desire to. I have no desire to do that. I would be bored to death getting up here and going, "Oh yeah, now the new churro is the cinnamon swirl Dole Whip Deluxe," and I don't care about that. I want to talk about the juicy stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so this is the fun stuff. So I'm glad you can join me today, brother. I want to thank everybody for watching. Comment down below. I know you guys have opinions on this. Comment down below. Please and do. As always, have a wonderful, wonderful day.